And also the people that are doing the designs for the they're doing the designs for the architecture for the signage. They're having issues with having a certain identity, something that is representative of what downtown Tampa looks like, and also what Tampa Heights looks like. Something that is not necessarily a word, but we've had this same conversation in our board meetings about some type of emblem or logo that can have some definitive meaning for, hey, if you go to Charlotte, you know you're in the Queen City, and they have everything there with the tiara and the crown all around Charlotte. Things like that is what they're working on. Yes, sir. I don't know which one you're talking about. So I'm almost finished. But those wayfinding signs, they'll have landmarks. They'll have the QR codes. If you're close to it, they'll have information about the particular location. And we're really making sure that we drive that because we want to continue again to talk about the historic context of the area for newcomers and or transplants who live in the area. We also have exactly right. Yes. Yes. And that all right, and I'm getting clocked on time. But yes, we want to make sure that we continuously understand the history of the area because a lot of times it gets erased. But the city is also working on a soul trail that will go through different CRAs and neighborhoods. The Junior Civic Association is also working on highlighting the history of Central Avenue corridor. But our CRA only has a certain section that our funds can go towards for that. But we do have funds for the Soul Trail that will go through Tampa Heights. I'm going to stop there. If you guys have any more questions, I think my information is on the website. Oh, I'm sorry. Tampa Bay Tampa Bay Reef Ball Project. We are putting funds towards putting cement blocks of reef balls along the Hillsborough River. What that does is that a lot of the what am I oysters, they will clamp onto that cement, and what they do is they actually purify the water by taking in a lot of the impurities that are in the water. It's just one of those things that allows for the Hillsborough River to be a lot better uh, 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 less polluted, I should say. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Lena, you have the floor.
Okay, Junior Civic Association report. We still have not really had our strategic session yet. I reported at the last meeting how many of our children that used to live in Tampa Heights and their families have moved, whereas a couple of years ago, we had children attending 7 schools that are mostly in Tampa Heights or around Tampa Heights. Those same children are now at 37 schools throughout the county. And whereas the Junior Civic Association started to be able to work with our children and families in Tampa Heights, now we have to change. And the board is having a strategic session next month to decide how we're going to do what we do, helping children to become civic minded and leadership trained, work in talk about health and nutrition. And so we really have to go back and review what we do. Luckily, we have a partnership with the school system that with the parents' permission, we could go into the schools and find out where the children are. So it's possible to connect with them. But of course, that means more dollars, more funds. How do we do that if that's what we, and other details. So by September's general meeting, I'll be able to report on some of the results of that strategic session and how do we do that. We had an awesome summer. We had summer camps at 3 different sites. We will send out the link so that you could see some of the activities that the children were involved with. Under civic engagement, they went down to the county commissioner and had some conversations with one of them and had a lot of questions. They worked with some developers on some of the projects that are happening in Tampa Heights. They had their positions on some of them. They had a presentation on the new WISE project, and they had to, a group of them were the city council members, and then there was the audience, and they had to get up and give their opinion, and then city council had to vote. City council voted the first time that they did not like the project, and then one of them decided, wait a minute, I'm going to switch, and then they changed it 4-3 that they did like the project, but they were still asking questions about what is my community going to look like? Is it going to be safe to cross the street? Those big buildings, my community is going to look so different. And so it's awesome to hear the children get involved in that. Last year, they had a developer who's working on the project on Central Avenue that came out and had a presentation to you all before, and to us before, and I guess they'll come back. But she came and presented to them the same project to them last year, and they told her what all they wanted. This year, when she came back, she showed them that everything that they had asked about was included, except they didn't get their pool. They wanted a swimming pool. And they asked her, well, after the development is done, are people who look like me going to be able to come there? Am I going to be welcome coming there? So we're raising children who are very, very conscious about what's going on. I'm so proud of them. And so what we do now, because we are already involved with them, we have to figure out how we keep being involved with them from their small to these young adults who are now taking our places and being very civic minded. We've had an issue with our early learning center, which is the new building that we built at 3717 North Central Avenue. The Housing Authority, that was built especially for us to work with the children at the Housing Authority. And as you may know, they're redeveloping Robles Park Village. A week ago, they got the last permission from HUD that they were waiting on. So in the next 10 months or so, all the remaining 300 families are going to be gone. What that does to our center is that because we built that to provide services for the younger children over there, that the families are not there anymore. We've had a lot of problems with hiring staff. We had some misbehavior by staff. We just had to close down in July. However, we've gotten a contact, and this is nowhere solidified. I'm just sharing information. We've gotten a contact from the Urban League. Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos, that rich guy, he has created academy, Bezos Academy, and he has put them in 3 different states. He's now coming back to Florida. He was raised in Florida, right? He was raised in Florida, and he's coming back to Tampa area, looking for 3 sites here. And they have visited our facility there, which is early learning. By next month, the Bezos representatives are coming down and they'll decide whether our site is going to be one of them. They operate on the Montessori's curriculum. Our center is built right now for smaller classrooms, so they would need at least one of the walls removed so that they could have the open space, which is what their curriculum is about. So we'll see by I guess 3 weeks or so from now, we'll be able to report what's happening with that. So that's some good stuff. We haven't started after school programs again because of what I said. Also, the county is doing some assessment on funding. We usually get 200 for the last 3 years. We've gotten $216,000 from the county for our programs. This year, there's a new commissioner, Commissioner Wyson. They have looked at all of the nonprofits that the county usually funds, and we are all up for assessment. So we just gotta put some paperwork from them that they want to assess. All of us have gotten, they want to know how much money we bring in, where we get money from, how much money it is. The proposal is that no more than 33% of a nonprofit's money should come from the county. That's in the proposal. It hasn't gone through yet. And some of the other nonprofits have gotten funding from different parts of the county's budget, and not everyone knows that. So they want to dig in and find out how many people, how many shots are nonprofits getting at the same county's budget, and maybe they shouldn't be funding all these nonprofits. Anyway, that's coming up in this coming year. They are going to meet in September. County commissioners are going to meet in September. As of today, we understand Tampa Heights Junior Civic Association is still in the budget, but we have to fill that information that we got today. And then they'll decide when they go through budget hearing in September. So we'll know whether we get funding. I think that's all for Tampa Heights Junior Civic Association. Our building needs some TLC. As you could see, we got rain coming in down over here. For those who don't know, this building is a part of a lease that we have with Department of Transportation for 25 years for $1. But everything that we've done in here, ever since we assumed the lease, has been our responsibility. So we did do the pitch roof, but now we need another $2,900 to take care of that area. We got some more leak on the flat area as well. So if you want to help with taking care of the building, you could make a contribution, just let me know. We also have to take care of the dormers. They did the roof, but we didn't do the dormers. And if you look at the floor, you'll see some little holes that are popping up since we did the tenting. Those are some of the results of before the tenting. So that's about the building. I'm sorry, I forgot about the camera. Last thing is about the garden. The garden is ready for the fall planting. We planted all of the sun hemp during the summer. Time to cut them down, lay them down, cover them with cardboard, and we will start planting. Planting day will be on the 30th of September. We usually plant earlier, but because it's getting hotter longer, we have to step back to the 30th of September. You will get information on this. We have a few plots that are available. And one of the things we want to make everybody know, that particularly newcomers to our neighborhood, that we love for our residents to come and plant in the garden. A plot is $60 donation for the year. With that, you get your plot. We provide the seeds, the plantlets for whatever you want to plant. We provide what are the kinds of plants that will grow, and then you could select from that. And also we ask for 20 hours per person for the year in volunteer time to work at the garden. So plant day is on the 30th of September. On the 9th of September, we're having a potluck in the afternoon. It starts at 5 o'clock. That's for everybody to come, particularly new and old gardeners. If you have any interest at all in gardening, if you have no interest at all in gardening, just come out and let's hang out together. It's a community gathering opportunity. We will have a plot that's going to be raffled off, half of a plot. And those who are interested, I think that might be for the new people who might be interested. But come on out on the 3rd, that was the 9th of September, starting at 5 at the garden. Please come out and let's just have some socializing together. We're going to have on the 23rd of September, we're going to have a change out. That's going to be a big deal. We started changing out the old plots. You know, the wood lasts about 3 years. We've been there for 13 years now. We will send out emails. I'm just saying, just as long as you're on the list, you'll get them. We'll ask Josh to do that. So that's going to be a day when we'll change out all of the old wood and actually put in metal plots that we got donated by another nonprofit. So we want people to come out and help us on that day. On November the 11th, I believe, is our once a year fundraising, then garden to table dinner. That's a big thing. We're going to, that's a cost for that. We usually have the jazz band from Blake come out to be a part of that. That's November 4th. Let me put on my glasses so I can say so those are the dates. The 4th of November is the dinner table. So those are all my announcements. Planting Day on the 30th of September. The remodeling of the garden is on the 26th of 23rd of September. The garden potluck dinner, where you just bring anything, that's on the 9th. And then garden to table on the 11th of November the 4th. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll add those dates to our next newsletter. So do any of my quadrant reps have any updates? Anything they want to say? No? Okay, we'll move on to Brian, land use. Is there anything you have with land use right now you want to talk about?
Land use committee that is very active, made up of architects, builders, real estate agents, other folks in the profession. We meet via Zoom monthly, first Wednesday of the month. That's on the calendar on the homepage of our website, and it's open to the public if you just ask for an invite. We discuss all rezonings and variances and anything else going on in the neighborhood, and in a way ties in directly to what I'm about to present to you tonight. For those that don't know me, my name's Brian Seal. I'm a former president of the Civic Association and still board member. And we're going to talk for probably about the next 15 minutes. I'm going to give a presentation on our proposed overlay district. Some of you have seen this several times over the last few years. It has evolved. The point is to go over what this is, where it's at in the stage, why we're doing it, and to explain some changes that have happened from the last time we talked about this. So that land use committee meets to discuss what's going on in Tampa Heights, who needs special permissions to build things certain ways, because we are really concerned with walkability and affordability in this neighborhood. We're the closest neighborhood to downtown, the oldest neighborhood outside of downtown Tampa. It should be one of the most walkable places in this city, yet for many reasons it's not. It's also getting prohibitively expensive to live here. And so we've been concerned with these things. But part of the problem is that here, I'll stay on camera for those watching at home. Part of the problem is that Tampa Heights is not covered outside of this historic district by any sort of special rules. And the city's zoning code dates back a couple of decades. The last major update was in the 80s, and it's very suburban focused. Think of places like Carrollwood, and further north that are very car centric, where you have to drive everywhere because you're far from everything. And so what we have proposed and zoning, for those that the concept of zoning, what zoning is it's a set of rules that governs how and where you can build certain things. And so what we propose is called an overlay district, which is a special set of rules on top of the city's outdated zoning that they haven't gotten their act together in. They were supposed to have done this about 12 years ago, and have not gotten their act together. So we have taken this into our own hands to come up with this because of affordability, safety, and to encourage positive redevelopment. Yes. The city of Tampa, city council, city of Tampa staff. So what this overlay is not, because some people have asked about this we've been working on this specific proposal for 4 years now. And sometimes this comes up. It's not aimed to shame. There are examples of things that are not a fit for the neighborhood, but it's not aimed to shame the people to build them. You just have to show examples. It's not anti-density. Density means building more. Instead of a single family home now becomes 2 or 3, or in a small apartment building. Density is good because housing supply keeps the cost down. It's not anti-townhome, not anti-modern architecture, and these rules are not applicable to your existing home. They're only applicable to people that build new things or if you do a major renovation. But we'll get into a little of those changes. Very quickly, history of this effort. In 2000, the historic district, local historic district that this building sits in was created. It covers about a third of the neighborhood, and that's it. The reason how they create that is they go and do an architectural survey of every building in the area, and you have to meet a certain threshold. In this district, it was, I believe, about 60% of the buildings within this third of the neighborhood were deemed contributing. They had historic character, they were preserved, and so that met the threshold to create this historic district, which has a very strict set of standards on how you can design new buildings and how you can renovate historic buildings. But the rest of the neighborhood is still quite historic. It's still laid out in a very historic way. On many streets, there are still some historic homes, just not the concentration of them, so they got excluded. At that time, the neighborhood said, well, we still need some special standards because this is a special neighborhood. It's a historic neighborhood. It has unique character that makes it different from the places built from in New Tampa and so on and so forth in different decades. Nothing's been done since then. In 2014, the city promised this neighborhood that they would create this for us in 2015. That never happened. And so we got tired of asking, and the city kept kicking the can down the road because of staff resources and so on and so forth. And they said, if you want special rules for your neighborhood, go create it yourself. We're not going to give you any time or resources, but you can take it on. So we did. So that is where this came about. In 2021, we officially submitted this language. It is a legal document. Camilo Soto over there helped write the first draft. He's a real estate attorney. So it has gone through multiple levels of city review over the last 2 years, and it is now coming up for a vote at City Council on September 14th. We've got great community support. We've had a petition out there for at least a year. 256 people have signed the petition of support, 90% of whom live in this neighborhood. The only opposition that we have received have been from 2 development consultants that do not live in the neighborhood. Have been the only people that have officially gone on record opposed to this. One is an attorney and one is a land use consultant, and they have represented a couple properties that this organization has opposed. The Tampa Downtown Partnership, you've heard that name a couple times. Again, they're a special services district that provides some of those services that Kareem was talking about. Part of their district does come into Tampa Heights and overlaps with it. They support this. A group called Walk Bike Tampa that works closely with the city on pedestrian and bike safety issues has endorsed this. So to put this in context real quickly, and this kind of demonstrates why it's not fair that Tampa Heights has been left out for so long. This is a map of the city's overlay districts. These dotted lines represent historic districts. This is Ybor City. This is Tampa Heights District. The orange is the entire Tampa Heights neighborhood. This is Hyde Park. This is Seminole Heights Historic District. Everything in a solid line is an overlay, which has special standards aside from just history-based that we talked about. Tampa Heights has one, but it doesn't cover the whole area. Ybor's covers the entire area itself. Seminole Heights has one, but they got created a special district that covers more than just their historic area. Because again, it comes down to, do you have enough well-preserved buildings? There's only enough in here and only enough in here. But these areas, the city says, still have an important historic character to them. They just don't have the quantity of buildings in them. But look around the city, and sorry, downtown has its own special design standards as well, covering downtown. That's just not shown on the map. What's missing from this area? Tampa Heights, Riverside Heights, Ridgewood Park. In the center city, we are surrounded, West Tampa here, Kennedy, Hyde Park. We are surrounded by other areas in the other neighborhoods in the city, and these core neighborhoods have been left out for years. Everyone else has gotten special protections to protect the character of their neighborhood, and Tampa Heights has not. That's why I think that's important to show. Unfortunately, we could not extend this into other parts like Riverside Heights and Ridgewood Park because we don't represent them. But Tampa Heights does cover the majority of that area. So here's some reasons we're doing this real quickly. Rent affordability. Percentage of renter-occupied households spend more than 30%. 30% is sort of that threshold that most bankers say you shouldn't spend more than a third of what you make on your housing, right? Well, red is more than 50%. Look at how expensive it is in Florida because it's all about relative to how much you make. Everybody says New York and California are so expensive to live at. Florida's an affordable place, not according to the data, right? Look at rental inflation that's happened. This is from pre-COVID. This is before the COVID boom here. This is what happened during COVID. In major cities in the Southeast, major metros in the Southeast, look at who let them buy rental inflation. Tampa Bay. Similar to home prices. Year over year, Tampa Bay went up 34.8% from March of 21 to March of 22 during that COVID boom, right? Tampa Heights during the similar period went up 49%. We outpaced the rest of Tampa Bay in terms of how much it cost to buy a house here. Now, that's tapered off a little bit in the last year, but that tapering off doesn't mean it gets more affordable. It just means it grows less. That growth in property value is here to stay. And that's not necessarily property value that you can take with you. It's too expensive to move anywhere else. Here's another problem and another reason why we're doing this. Pedestrian safety. Tampa Bay is one of the most dangerous places for people to walk and bike in the country. Every year, a group called Smart Growth America, well, not every year, every couple of years, they put out this report. We have consistently been in the top 10 most dangerous places in America. Walkability. Here's another reason and some more data behind why we need to change things around here. There's a website called WalkScore. And what WalkScore does is it looks at how much is within the area you're in that you can walk to, so you don't have to drive. They take into account grocery stores, other places of business, schools, churches. How much can you walk around? Well, our score they give us is 63. here's some of our other competitors. Here's Atlanta, Nashville, Miami, Charlotte, and our friends in St. Petersburg. These are all the zip codes surrounding their downtown and including portions of their town, just like us. Everyone's kicking us in terms of how walkable they are. Tampa Heights and downtown Tampa are not walkable places. Miami gets a 91. They're around downtown Miami. So much within walkability. We got to change that. So if the city's not going to do it, who's going to do it? They said you do it yourself. So that's why we're here. So what are we doing specifically? This has been where the rubber meets the road, has been the toughest part of this, is to tackle those problems. We know we have those problems, right? What can we do about them? What can we legally do about them as a citizen group proposing some changes? And here's part of the other fact that we're going to talk briefly about tonight. The state government keeps trying to preempt local governments and prevent them from doing certain things. So this proposal has undergone significant changes in each of the last 2 years to comply with new state laws that tries to basically neuter what you can do on the local level. But here's one thing we can do. And here's another thing. We would love it for this to be more robust, more comprehensive. That takes a lot of resources to write and a lot of political battles to fight. So we tried to say, let's bite off what's politically achievable and what will make at least some impact. We got to start with something. We may not be able to accomplish everything, but we can do something. One of those things is accessory dwelling units, ADUs. They're called granny flats, garage apartments. Currently, if you're zoned in residential single family, you can't build one, period. Can't build it. What the city will allow us to do is make it a little easier, and you can get a special use permit, which is a staff level approval of a permit. If you live south of Columbus, that's actually already zoned multifamily. However, that takes up one of your multifamily units if you're going to build an ADU. So this allows greater density, which means more housing units for folks and more places to live, and they're smaller, therefore more affordable. So it's through that special use permit. It's going to lower the parking minimums for that. So we can hopefully, you can park on the street, or you can walk or ride a bike for folks that want to live in this urban area. It drops those parking minimums. Someone can still build the parking for it if they want to, but they don't have to. And then the minimum occupancy has changed. Before, it was not allowing more than 2 people, period. Now, if you're related, you can have more than 2 people in an ADU. So something where a small family can move into an ADU now. Also, we're going to allow ADUs to be taller than 15 feet. In the city where they're allowed, the city code says you can only go 15 feet tall in the structure. That means you can't put a unit over a garage. Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So we're increasing that, so that, and allowing them up to 1,100 square feet, which is the size of a large 2-car garage. So not a large, but a average size 2-car garage. So you could put a unit up above that legally now, which has not been allowed by the city. Yeah, not changing setbacks. So why do ADUs make sense? Real quickly. So 28% of the American population lives alone. But 90% of our residential units in this country are made of 2 or more bedrooms. So there's a mismatch, and there's an affordability mismatch. To build that much, to maintain that much extra space costs money, but that doesn't make any sense. And in 2019, before that COVID boom, Tampa Bay's housing supply was already short for 29,000 people. Now that this many people have moved here, we're going to be short even more than that. The data just isn't available yet, but you can imagine how much shorter we are on housing units. Well, ADUs are quick, easier to build. If we can make them easier to permit, we can have folks building smaller stuff. But here's the other interesting thing about an ADU. It doesn't have to be detached. You can convert a garage to it. You can convert your upstairs to an ADU with a separate access. So there's multiple configurations that are legally an accessory dwelling unit to allow you to create another living space out of your house or on your property. Historically, ADUs are compatible with Tampa Heights. Why should we allow these in Tampa Heights? A lot of folks in other parts of the city don't want them. Well, look at all what's going on here. You got Jeremy's house right here. historically with an ADU over the garage, right? Here's one property that's got 2 cottages on the front and 2 in the back. Those are ADUs. This is done all over some of these are in the historic district, some are not. One of the second big things we're trying to tackle is walkability and community design. How are we going to do that? So Tampa Heights, much like West Tampa and East Tampa and some other historic parts of the city, Hyde Park, have alleys. Legally, we have alleys. Now, alleys have been a mess. The city hasn't done a good job maintaining them. They haven't enforced maintenance rules on people that live next to them, but we have them. They're legally there, and some of them are passable. What we've been ending up with is people that have turned their backs to the alley, and when they have the opportunity to use it, they're paving over their entire front yard and putting garages there. We'll get to why that's a bad thing in a minute. But what this does is say, hey, you should use your alley. But if you don't have an alley, because they don't cover all at Tampa Heights, most of it, but not everybody touches an alley. If you don't touch an alley, or your alley's overgrown and it's just going to be cost prohibitive for you to make changes to allow you to access that with your car, you can drive in from the street, no problem. You can still have a front driveway, but that front driveway needs to be single car width. And we'll get to why that's an issue. No. Yep. And so part of how we do this and part of this incentive, so what changed with the state law? The state basically passed a law this spring that made it easier for businesses to sue local governments for anything that could be construed as costing them money. So we had to rephrase some of these things, which are good incentives and good standards for creating a walkable urban neighborhood, and twist them, not twist, but reconstruct them into a solely incentive-based system to comply with that law. So we can't force anybody to do this, but we can provide you an incentive to do some of these things. One of them is you can get a relaxation on your parking standards. So the city requires way too much off-street parking for development. It's written in the city code. If you're building a single family home, if you're building multifamily, if you're building mixed use, if you're building commercial, the city has a table that says how many square feet you're building or how many bedrooms you make. This is how much parking you have to provide. That parking is valuable square footage on your property. It's expensive to build garages, all of those things. We tend to think that the free market can come up with that, right? Somebody who's going to own that property, whether a resident or a business owner, says, I don't need to build this much parking. I can build a smaller parking garage that costs tens of thousands of dollars per space to build. I'd rather dedicate this portion of my property to green space than having an extra guest parking spot. So we're saying you can use the parking in front of your house on the street, which has traditionally been used for street parking. You can count that towards there and keep that green space on your land. So we're allowing people to do that. That's not been done in the city so far. It was the first time. Orientation to townhomes, we're taking away something to make it easier for them to do a configuration if their garages aren't fronting up on the street. And then front porches, historically, houses have been pretty close up to the sidewalk, but that's their porch that comes up a little bit closer to the sidewalk. Now you're seeing a lot of bare, huge plain, stucco walls on a lot of these structures being built right up against the sidewalk. Doesn't create a good safety or walking condition, but we are going to allow setback incentives for front porches to creep a little closer. So talking about a few of these, those are the code mechanisms about what's going to be allowed to happen in the neighborhood if this passes. But, this comes from a theory and practice called traditional neighborhood development, which really looks at how things were built in the 1900s to 1920s, the period of this neighborhood, and why that makes sense from a walkability standpoint. It's that, if you have a grid network like we have, it's short routes. Commercial destinations should be close to home. You got to provide safety to pedestrians, and front porches allow people from inside and on their porch to have surveillance. It's a safety thing. If you can see there instead of having a blanked off wall and you have no relationship to your front door to the street, you don't know what's going on your street. It also creates a sense of community. That front porch community term is because people that hang out in their front yard and their front porch, they get to know their neighbors. They're out there talking to people that are working in the garden in the front, that are walking their dogs in the front. It's not all privatizing everything in the back of your property. But this isn't just a theory. Groups like the Federal Highway Administration back this up. Federal Highway, car people in the government back this up. Fewer driveways mean more affordable, smaller home sites and more space for on-street parking. Alleys eliminate residential driveways, and this is important, and that need backing up onto the street, which would otherwise occur and is inherently unsafe. Front-facing residential driveways where you have to back up onto the street is inherently unsafe from the federal government car people. Neo-traditional design encourages on-street parking by counting spaces towards the maximum parking space requirement. Encourages on-street parking. Again, we are not creating these ideas. We're putting them into practice. The US DOT recommends traffic calming through on-street parking. Having people park on the street stops it from being such a drag race. Sometimes people get annoyed by sometimes having to weave around a parked car and slow down and let your neighbor pass. You know what it does? Slows down people racing through your neighborhood. And it serves as a buffer between pedestrians and vehicles. So, what are some examples of this in practice? Let's take a look up here real quick. You can see when folks orient their vehicle access on their alley, or in this case, from the front, but with a narrow driveway, what do? You get more green space up front. You get more room for shade trees, planting new trees or preserving them. You get that direct access and direct relationship to your sidewalk. So this is the type of development we want to encourage. Right now, there's nothing. People do this by choice. Some of these you can see are new and they're different architectural styles, and some of these are old and historic. But you see they all preserve that green space up front and have a direct relationship with the pedestrian experience, which is a good thing. But this is what we've been seeing a lot of going on in the neighborhood. And these are all properties that had the option to treat their vehicle access differently. What do you see here? You see a whole bunch of pavement in the front yard, whole lot of missing green space, whole lot of places that have no relationship to their neighbors that walk by them, that create dangerous situations for cars backing out or even parking over sidewalks when you've got people walking dogs, people walking kids in strollers, having to jump out into the street because they're regularly parking over the sidewalk. These are design choices, but they're the wrong design choices for Tampa Heights. So the number 3 major thing that this initiative is going to do is drastically reduce commercial parking. So, and here's the mechanism for doing that. For non-residential development, so that means commercial and mixed use with a commercial component, we're going to set a standard of 1 space per 2,500 square feet. That's about a roughly 50% reduction in the amount of parking required. For structures under 1,500 square feet, so think about a bungalow that somebody wants to convert into a cafe. They will be not required to provide any off-street parking. And I'll provide an example of that in a minute and why that works. And on-street parking in front of that property, again, if you're not doing this, see what this does. These properties, what do they have? 0 on-street parking. They're eliminating their chance for their guests, for their neighbors' guests, for themselves, for anybody to use any of this space for parking. It's gone. That on-street parking's gone. So part of our incentive is, if you want to reduce your parking, you can use that on-street parking to count towards it for your business if you don't pave it all over. Franklin Street, which is just here in the section north of downtown that terminates at the YMCA, any site with less than 20,000 square feet is exempt from any parking requirements. And we'll tell you why in a minute. And then overall, we're going to allow up to a 10% reduction in any parking requirements if they provide bike parking spaces. So for every 5 spaces in a bike rack, they can take away 1 car space. So why? Why do we need to drop commercial parking minimums? Well, let's talk about the redevelopment that's happened in downtown Tampa and up in Seminole Heights that have lesser parking requirements. You go up Florida Avenue, as soon as you start crossing going north of MLK, you see all of the restaurants and shops that have popped up over the years. Well, what's going on Florida Avenue in Tampa Heights? Not a whole lot over the last few years. Here's a couple snapshots of what our major commercial corridors look like. Here's Columbus. Everything in red is surface parking lot. Here's that Franklin Street area I was talking about where we want to drop. This is the interstate. Right there is downtown. That's all the surface parking surrounding that area. If there was another way to do it, you would think that somebody would have figured it out. But the problem is the city still requires too much parking, even though there's on-street parking all up and down Franklin Street. There's on-street parking on a lot of these side streets here. But there's also just an inordinate amount of surface parking. So let's drop those minimums and let's get some of these vacant lots, vacant buildings converted into actual commercial uses, because we don't have to dedicate so much empty land to parking. I mean, you all drive by a lot of this. How often are those lots filled up? Never. But the problem is if somebody wants to come in and put a small business there, not a giant mega development, but a small business on there, it's cost prohibitive because they got to provide 10 to 20 parking spaces. That's just a bad use of land in a neighborhood where you want your neighbors that live in the surrounding area to walk or bike there. So I talked about the 1,500 square foot rule that we're putting into place. This is the prime example of that. If everybody's familiar with Lee's Grocery, that's just a couple blocks from here. It's a pizza and craft beverage place. It has 0 off-street parking spaces. Nothing. If it were to have to try to put anything in, you'd lose that wonderful courtyard right there. That's used as a gathering space for people to eat outside. This is a small property. It's a small building. Requiring a business like this to have off-street parking makes it not possible to operate a business that way. Then they have to go and lease land a block or two away to park their customers, or they've got to tear out their patio to do something like that. Or they've got to go through the long and arduous city council process to be allowed, like Lee's was about, 12 years ago, to operate without a parking space. Well, for this section of the neighborhood, this is a key gathering place, right? I mean, and there's just not enough neighborhood places like this. We need some of these old, small commercial buildings to come in with a local small business in here. Turn it into an office, turn it into a restaurant, turn it into a coffee shop, turn it into whatever you like, a small convenience store, but that's not happening because the process is so difficult. So at least one little thing we can do is drop out their parking requirements and make it a little bit more profitable to renovate a small place like this and open it up as a business. So all this stuff that we're talking about here, these are the mechanisms. This is how it happens. If council passes this, that's what'll take effect. But this didn't come from out of nowhere. And why is this organization behind that? Well, in our neighborhood plan in 2003, city council passed a neighborhood plan for Tampa Heights. They just, again, never put those values into legal action for this neighborhood. 2003, they said, provide for on-street parking, allow alleys for access, design houses that are friendly to the street, encourage streets to become outdoor living spaces, encourage development that preserves trees, reduce impact to paved areas, encourage design and orientation that reflects historic Tampa Heights. 2003, the neighborhood association worked with consultants, worked with the city, came up with these values for the neighborhood. City council voted on it, put their stamp on it, said, these are the values, this is the way Tampa Heights needs to be built, and never put it into law. The city also has a comprehensive plan. They're in the process of updating this right now, but the last time they did it was 2011, and they targeted 2040 for their comprehensive plan. So again, talking about another countywide and citywide government document that puts values into place, just like our neighborhood plan, but that has to then be put into the zoning code to be legally effective to govern this stuff. But they said in 2011, that neighborhoods like Tampa Heights are called urban villages, and they have a unique historic pattern to them. I'm not going to read off each of these, but in a similar way, what it says is these are special urban neighborhoods with a historic development pattern, and we should have policies surrounding that. It never got put into action. But some of that's been slowly changing at the city. We are not alone in what we're trying to do. East Tampa, they just got approval to allow ADUs in their overlay district. I showed you that map earlier. They already have an overlay, but they weren't allowed to have ADUs. Just in June, they got allowed to do it. So we're following up behind them. Elements that we have in here, we pulled directly from Seminole Heights and West Tampa, which again, already have overlay districts. The city, ADU-wise, is looking at creating that citywide or expanding it to certain neighborhoods. We just can't wait for the city to get their act together for years and years and years of talking and studying. And then the parking, specifically reducing the parking minimums, I just also want to say, we didn't pull that out of thin air. Those recommendations came directly from HART. Kareem was talking about HART, which is the transit bus agency here. They spent time with us in 2022. They did 2 design charrettes here with us and have talked about what zoning changes need to happen in the neighborhood. They came up with recommendations, and those parking reduction recommendations came directly from their report last year. So we're not making this stuff up. Experts have looked at it. They just haven't put any of this stuff into action. And so we're taking it on ourselves to do it. Josh mentioned at the beginning of the meeting that we passed the Planning Commission. That was last Monday. Planning Commission's countywide. They are an advisory organization that looks at planning, city planning, urban planning issues. They unanimously voted to support this and pass it forward to City Council. So now that it's made it past that hurdle, this goes to City Council on September 14th at 5 p.m. So our next steps are, we need folks to support this. We need you to write to City Council there. And if you're possible to make the meeting and go talk in favor of this, we would appreciate that. If you're not able to go in person, the city has a way to electronically via something similar to Zoom or Teams to call in and voice your support. So with that, I know I've been talking a little while about this. It's been chock full of details, but I will take some questions now if anybody has some. Yes, Ari. Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of these ideas would work in other. Yep. Yep. Right. And the problem and the reason why this is a community generated initiative is that for years the city kicked the can on it and said, we'll get around to it one day, and years passed and years passed. So the same thing could happen to Riverside Heights unless a citizen group asks for it. But the good thing is there is a new city planning director as of last year. He's young, he's energetic, he's very smart, and he looks at things with fresh eyes. And we've been working closely with him on this. So there is some hope for other neighborhoods to get. Could this be expanded? I mean, that'd be more a question for the city attorney. It's not within our goals to do that, but yeah. Kareem. Correct. One month after passage. So the way that city council works, any new law they pass, any new ordinance, they have to vote on twice, I guess, so they don't have buyer's remorse. So September 14th is the same time. If it passes that, then in October, it comes before a vote again. People can always flip-flop their vote the second month, but it's not likely, especially if it passes with a big majority. But we'll have to publicize that if we get past the 14th. Now, in October, if that passes that second vote, then this takes effect 1 month later. So it would be November. theoretically. Yes. Yes, sir. Yep. That's correct. We're going to submit the names of the folks that support it, but I will tell you from my experience working with city council on a stuff, they don't tend to read a lot. They tend to listen to who shows up. So the petition matters, and thank you very much if you signed it, because the numbers matter, right? They care about the numbers. The numbers speak volumes, right? However, if 250 people sign it and only one shows up in support and 5 show up against it that night, even the 250 people that support it aren't there in that room, council is going to feel like people don't support it. They care about who shows up that night. Yes. Yes, we will be sending out emails, encouraging people to do this. Again, if somebody, for one reason or another, can't go in person, they can do it from their computer. They can log on and speak when they're called upon, like a video conference. But in person always helps the most. Letter writing's good, but again, I'll tell you, council doesn't always read those. Yeah. We last year we flyered every property in the neighborhood with some flyers about this. We probably don't have the time and manpower to flyer again, but I do, and I failed to bring them tonight. I do have yard signs, and they have a QR code that people scan with their phones. So if you would like a yard sign, just chat with me right after this, and I'll get your address and I'll come and put one in your yard for you. And we'll probably send something out also via email and social media to tell people we have yard signs. Lena. Yep. Yeah. Thank you. Any questions? I mean, hopefully I tried to explain the technicalities of it in a digestible way. But look like you're gonna, no. Yes. Yep. Well, thank you all for your time and attention on this and your support. Yes, ma'am. This is on the website, tambice.org. A tab called Overlay District has the link to our legal document that we are putting forth to council. It has the summary of the information that has been presented tonight. Yes. So we'll work to get out the word with your help. Thanks.
So thanks, Brian. So we're gonna have Paul now. He's gonna do that raffle for us.
Hey everybody. Now for the best part. Sorry, Brian. No, I'm just kidding. The I keep bees, and what I really like about beekeeping and what I like about community organizations is that it's a lot of little tiny things working together to create something bigger than themselves. So in each one of these jars is a pound of honey. It takes a couple 100,000 bees, 50,000 miles. So they have to fly around the planet twice, and some 2 million flower visits just in this one jar. So like piggybacking on what Brian's saying, it takes lots of little tiny efforts to make something pretty cool. So keep that in mind when you're out there at the city council meeting on the 14th, right? Okay, so we're gonna pick up a couple of tickets. Thanks, members. They got themselves a little raffle ticket here. And we're gonna go ahead and want to pull one out there for you. All right, we'll read it off. No cheating. All right, we got 4-2. Yeah. Yeah, sure. I mean, memberships are what makes the whole thing go round. It's $24 a year, so it's $2 a month. And it promotes all sorts of activities, buys the fun equipment to make online things happen, and kind of makes all the gears all the gears turn. So we need a little bit of cash to make that happen. Thanks for business memberships too. We can help promote that, and, and promote our local businesses. All right. So first ticket today, we got 42997. 42. Hey, there we go, right here. A new member tonight. Thank you very much. All right, you want to pick out the next one? Oh my gosh. Break anything. Thank you. All right, and this one we got 42994. Whoa. You're gonna give it up? You want to redraw? Okay, redraw. Giving it up. That's very kind. All right, we got 42996. Hey, nice. Thank you very much. Maybe we'll bring some honey out next time. So make sure you show up to the meetings and get engaged. Them for sale, yeah, usually they're $15. And if you want local honey from local flowers around here, just talk to me and I'll bring a big case next time.
So yeah, thanks guys. We are kind of going to be amping up that membership drive, because as a neighborhood, I think all of us want to do more cool stuff. So as Paul was saying earlier, if we can do some cooler things in the neighborhood and bring families out and things like that, will create more advocates for things like land use and other initiatives that we have in the neighborhood. So that's our goal, to kind of amp up. What's that? We got to do the fun stuff to do. I don't think we do enough fun stuff, but we're going to start doing more fun stuff. And then another point on that, recently, and this doesn't really have much to do with the Civic Association directly, but indirectly it does. So recently, arts and cultural funding was kind of up on the chopping block with the Hillsborough County Commission. They sort of talked about taking that out of the budget, and that affects Lena, what she's doing with Tampa Heights Civic, with the Junior Civic Association. It affects a lot of the arts and culture that exist in our neighborhood, which are things that make the neighborhood cool. So if you visit the Tampa Art Alliance page, they actually made a post on it today, and just sent an email to the commissioners about that. If you can and have the time, there's a link to send an email to all the county commissioners at once and just say, arts, don't put arts on the chopping block and keep funding it. What's the next tour homes? Oh yeah, thanks. That's another thing I wanted to say. So we're going to be doing a tour of Tampa Heights. I think it's October 20th, and we're actually going to be, what's that? The 21st? I might switch it to the 20th. Yeah. Yeah, the Downtown Partnership is doing some activations that day, and I just had a meeting with them yesterday. So we might be doing it on the 20th instead of the 21st, but I'm going to figure that out like this week and reach out to everybody. So I'm kind of handling I am handling the tour of homes, and it's going to be a tour of Tampa Heights with multiple businesses and also homes. So if there's anybody that wants to get involved in that and be a stop on it, we'll be announcing tickets for that pretty soon. That's a good idea. I'll work with Brian on that and see. That'd be a good way to promote, yeah, what he's talking about, right? So yeah, should be good.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.